Hey everyone, we're going to be talking about cell membrane structure and function today. If you just want to put the title on your notebook as cell membrane, that's totally fine. You can shorten it, but you will need your notebook. So if you don't have your notebook and your pencil, go ahead and pause the video and then grab that and come back when you are ready. So this is review, so you don't have to write it down because remember, we already have this in our notes, in the cell parts notes. The job of the cell membrane to control what goes in and out of the cell. It acts kind of like a gatekeeper, okay? It's like a doorway, right? The gate can open and close, and it allows certain things through. And what we're going to learn today, too, is that it doesn't let everything through. Right? We saw that in some of the labs that we've done. Not everything can go through the membrane because it's either too big or it's not the right shape. So we're going to learn more about that. All right, so go ahead and write this down. The cell membrane is made up of two things. So I'm going to tell you the first one. The first one is called phospholipids. You might be like, what the heck is a phospholipid? Well, we're going to talk about it. What words do you see in phospholipid? Sound like anything you've heard before? So phospho refers to phosphorus, right? You might have heard of phosphorus before. You don't have to know what it is, but it's found on the periodic table. And a lipid is another name for a fat, okay? So it's a fat that's got phosphate in it. Now, here's what it looks like. And you can just go ahead and draw. I drew like a stick figure. This is how I usually have kids draw it. But you need to know what a phospholipid looks like. You don't have to draw it super big, but it's a circle. And then it's got two tails, okay? And this is what makes up the cell membrane. Now remember, this is super, super tiny, okay? Cells are super, super tiny. So if this is a part that's inside the cell, it's going to be even smaller than a cell. Okay, so very, very tiny. Here's what a phospholipid actually looks like. So let me go back so we can see, right? The circle with the two tails. Okay, you kind of see it here. It's not really a circle, but do you see the two tails? What do you think the C's and the H's stand for, or the O's? So C is for carbon, right? These are atoms, okay? H is for, what do you think? Hydrogen. O is for oxygen. The P, that's our phosphorus, right? That's why it's called a phospholipid. So these are the two lipids that make up the tails. Now don't worry, you don't need to remember that these are C's and H's. You don't need to draw this, but I'm just showing you. Remember, atoms from the periodic table make up everything that's inside of a cell. So even though cells are super tiny, atoms like carbon and hydrogen are even tinier. So let's look at how these phospholipids line up. I'd like you to draw something similar to this left-hand drawing in your notebook. It doesn't have to be this detailed. Remember, just draw stick figures. So circle, two legs, circle, two legs, circle, two legs. And then on the bottom, circle, two legs. And it doesn't have to be this long, but this is how they line up to create the cell membrane. I'll give you a second to draw that. And notice on the right here, this is how they line up, right? Just like how you drew, but in the cell membrane to make a circle here, right? This is what the cell membrane is made of. Kind of crazy, huh? So notice it's got two sets of phospholipids, right? One layer on the top, one layer on the bottom, okay? So because it has two layers, the cell membrane is called a phospholipid bilayer. Bi means two. So two layers, right? Two layers of phospholipids. So you can go ahead and write this down if you haven't already. Remember, just go ahead and pause the video if you ever need extra time to write something down. So when we talk about the cell membrane doesn't let everything through. It's what we call selectively permeable. Okay, so it selects some things to go through. So permeable means things can go through. Okay, you may have heard like some rain jackets are impermeable to water, meaning they don't let water through. Permeable means they let water through. But it selects which molecules go through. So only some things can go through, other things can't. I want you to write this down as well. Remember when we've done all of our labs, we've shown that starch is a really big molecule. So starch maybe is like these blue molecules, and it's too big to go across the cell membrane. So this might be, a molecule that doesn't make it across the cell membrane. We know water is really, really small, so water can go across the cell membrane really easily. Remember we said it goes from high to low. On the right-hand picture, you'll see there's red and blue molecules. Who knows what molecules they are? It doesn't really matter. But notice only the red ones are able to get through the cell membrane. Okay, so the cell membrane only lets some things through. Remember, it's like that gatekeeper. It controls the gate to let things in or out. All right, so we said the cell membrane is made up of two things. I told you phospholipids. Now I need you to write number 2. Number 2 is proteins, okay? Take a look at this purple thing. This is a protein. What's it doing? It's making a channel for big molecules or molecules to get through the cell membrane. So go ahead and write that down, number 2. You already have number 1 written. So if we look at this protein, remember we said only certain things can go in and out of the membrane? Well, sometimes these molecules need a little more help, right? Maybe they're big molecules, maybe they can't really squeeze through the cell membrane. So we make little channels for them that guide them through to the other side of the cell membrane. Remember, the cell membrane in the cell, we need to get nutrients in, we got to get waste out. Okay, so stuff has to be able to go through the cell membrane. And if it's too big, we need little channels, little passageways. So don't write this down. I'll have you write something about it on the next page. But cell membrane channels bring molecules into a cell by opening a tunnel for the molecules with the right size and shape to pass. So let's take a look here. Okay, we have an animation. This red one is going to go in. Look, it fits so it can go through the cell membrane. Okay, so the red one, it's the right shape. It can go through that protein. The green one's the right shape over here. So the green one can go through this channel. Okay, but if the green one were to try to go into the top channel, or the red one were to try to go into this channel, they wouldn't be able to go. So it's only the ones with the right shape and size can go into the right tunnels. Okay. So here, what you can write is the red part here, that molecules have to be the right size and shape to go into that specific channel or tunnel. You can see that below here in this picture, right? This is oversimplified. This is kind of like cartoon. Because we have these little shapes, right? And we know that molecules are more complicated than just these simple shapes. But if we take a look, we notice this one's the right shape to fit into this channel, so it'll be able to go through. And the circle's the right shape to fit here, so it'll be able to go through. All right, one last thing. Proteins, they can make channels, right? The big channels. They can also be receptors. Notice you see the word kind of receive in there. So receptors receive or take in information, okay? So let's look. Here's a pink receptor on the outside. You guys have heard a lot about COVID, right? Okay, the virus that causes COVID actually comes in through a receptor on your cells. That's how it infects your cells and gets you sick. So because the cell doesn't have eyes and ears, okay, it uses receptors. Think of a cell as blind. It doesn't have eyes. How's it supposed to know what kinds of things are out there? Well, different things send messages. They send molecules as messages, and the receptors receive those molecules, and then they get information, okay? We'll talk more about them. Receptors can be kind of complicated, but we're just going to touch on them briefly. For now, all you need to know is that proteins can act as receptors, okay? They can be on the outside of the cell membrane, and they can be inside of it to make tunnels. So that wraps up that super quick note session, and let me know if you guys have any questions.